he was the St. Louis, Missouri election director and decided that he wanted to form his own poll pad. And what he did was he went through Dell products, Android, every other product out there, and he couldn't get himself into Apple. It took him 2 years before Apple would really even talk to him. Now we're the sole Apple subcontractor, so to speak. They are in our conference calls and everything else. We have all their security. They have the top security for the defense in the United States and everything else. If you were to buy this, we would lock out the internet and everything else. So really, you're just using the iPad. So it's not like any viruses or anything should ever come on this, because it will be locked out from the poll workers to be able to get into. I think any system would do that, not just our company, obviously. What we've done is we've made it simplified, we think, for Pennsylvania. And I'm going to go right into the poll pad itself. And then I will backtrack out if you wish to hear, or I can demonstrate for you guys afterwards how to import voters and do voter history after the election, things like that might not you might not be that interested in as long as it's done. So you get started on this screen, and it goes into, you can either manual enter a voter's name or scan a barcode of their driver's license. Okay, so I'm going to scan a barcode soon, and this would be, I understand, believe me, I was the election director when the voter ID law was trying to go through, so I understand everything with the voter ID law. However, it's there so that on a presidential election, if you have long lines and you will say, look, it'll go faster, we can scan your ID. My sons are in their early 20s, and they scan them, and their name and address and everything comes up to go into an establishment at night, okay? So I think a lot of people are familiar with it, even though they don't have to show. If you want to scan the barcode, it scans the barcode and it brings up the voter that quickly. Instead of paging through a paper poll pad, it brought him up that quickly. Okay, this is just a generic. What we have is a demo file from the Department of State, and then we added Scott Liedenbecker. He is actually the owner of the No Ink company. I'm in there. We put ourselves in there so that we can, our IDs would scan for you. Okay, now that came right up.
Okay.
Okay, now what I'm going to do though is, instead of voting him, I'm going to do the manual entry, so you can see if you don't want to use the barcodes, or if somebody doesn't have a license or anything like that, how quick it can be for that. And so I will put in maybe a P and an A search, and it brings up everybody in that precinct that starts with a P and an A. Okay, and as you guys notice, people are flagged, inactive, affirmation required. Things like that. Anything that you need.
Absentee
yes.
or something.
Absentee, voter ID required for first-time voters, things like that. It would be flagged in that pink. Can you see that over top of that? I'm not sure. Okay, in the pink. Now the green, I already voted that one.
How do you, the poll versus the poll books, how do those get flagged, or however you call it?
It's
now?
from what we enter into the SURE system.
Okay, so the printout of the poll book that voters sign has that info?
Yes.
When you print it out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we would do is whatever they want flagged, we would put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know that if you were to decide, let's do it early anyway to make sure everything's ready, when someone comes in, like an absentee comes in later, you can manually enter it for that voter, if that makes sense. Similar to you hand stamping, you could still manually enter, because they would have all the security passwords.
Peace of mind of doing it on Wednesday instead of
Exactly.
Monday afternoon.
Exactly. So you lock it with passwords so that poll workers can't go and change stuff unless you want them to on election day. No, if you had somebody that was supposed to be in this precinct, but you had them in that precinct, technically we could switch it on election day, but you could over the phone if you so desired, if that makes sense. So that way they would be in there and scan the right thing. So right now I have all the PAs on the screen. Okay, now the one that was voted is locked out, and you can see the pink ones are I didn't mean to just hit that. Let me go back into that screen because it had a couple good examples there. I'm back in the PAs. On the bottom, you can see wrong precinct. There are only 2 PAs that are in the wrong precinct here. You see how they're grayed out?
Yes.
And I can't vote them.
Okay.
Okay, but see, there would be a way for you to make them active in that precinct if you gave the
I
poll
see.
worker
If they-
you
okay.
understand what I mean? Instead of giving them a provisional ballot or something because they're not in the poll book, you would have a choice. Only send that precinct's voters on each poll pad, or send the whole county, but only have that precinct be active. And then on the bottom now, especially in a presidential, that was your first question when I first got here was, can you put everybody in there so that now I can look at it, I'm the poll worker, and I said, no, you're in the wrong precinct. You have to go to this precinct because it's on there. Okay, instead of calling the office or sending them away, then they call the office. It saves them a lot of phone calls. They can do it right there at the point of registration, send them to the correct precinct.
Presidential years, we put extra help on just
lot.
to field those
Right.
calls.
Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start over again, and let me show you one thing first. On the very first screen up here, it says inspector.
Yeah.
Okay? So right now in your poll book, the inspector sign initial, every person, okay? What we came up with, which we can do anything. We can have them sign the screen. We can have them do whatever you guys want to do in Lebanon County, because we have it different in different states and everything else. But we have, for PA, we have a place to sign in an inspector in the morning. So what will happen is, I just signed somebody in last night when I was going through this. It's John Smith. So what will happen is John Smith will come up for every voter already. You'll see his name in a minute, and then you don't have to initial everything all day. It saves you that step. Okay? If a new person comes in, it's already on your main screen. They just come in and sign their name in. Okay, so if somebody comes in at 2 o'clock, just sign their name, and then John Smith will be all for all the voters before 2, and Jane Doe will be after 2. So it just saves that extra step. So there's a lot of things like that you can do that saves time. So for a regular person, let's vote somebody out here, okay? They come in, sign their name. I'm using my finger. We have a stylus that you can use. You sign your name, you accept it. Okay, now here's where you would compare the signatures, and John Smith's name is. Okay, there's John Smith, and there's the 2 signatures. That's a signature I just did, and that's a signature on file. Okay, now up here is a spot to put in the voter number. Okay, let's say it's voter number 7. Okay, you're calling out the numbered list of voters. It's voter 7. You process, and that's it. It's back to the screen. So it's that quick to look somebody up and process them. Now, I've already had some counties ask me about not even putting that number in because the poll pad keeps a list of everybody that comes in throughout the day in order. So theoretically, and I'll show you how you could get, well, I'll pull it up now. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, there we go. Let me pull it up. We have it password protected, okay, to get into this. But you have election notes, poll pad summary, absentee listing, add a voter. Like I said, if you wanted to give them that right on a specific voter on election day. But here's your poll pad summary in order of the way I've voted people in the last few days. So I know there's already some counties thinking, boy, I can get rid of that person. But that's not up to me to tell you. That's your solicitor and your guys' decision, not obviously anything I would tell you to do.
Excuse me, may I
Yes.
ask a question? You
Yes.
already went off the screen, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
for voter privacy, can you open that up?
No. You can only open that if you have a password on how many people came in. Now, if you want it on election day, a watcher's allowed to look at the number list of voters.
I'm talking about how they voted.
Oh, no, you can't see that. That's on the voting machine.
This
is just registering the vote.
This is just the poll book.
Do you understand me? This just says who the voter is and that they just came in to vote.
Just like the book you sign when you
No,
go.
it's replacing the book, not the machines. You have no idea how they voted because they voted on the voting machine after they
Is
got
this
processed.
in any way connected to the voting machine?
No, it's not. And it can be used with any system. It's not. It has nothing to do with any voting system. All it does is replace the
Electronic
paper
poll book.
poll book. Yes, that's all it is.
Right, we
Right.
can download from the state SURE system, the state registration system, into the pads, instead of printing the poll books.
Right.
And then, the day after the election, Do they go in a tower or something? I mean, can you load them all at once, Joe? or-
Yeah.
So the day after the election, we just put them back in the tower, plug it into the computer, and it downloads credit for
The
everyone that
history.
voted yesterday at the election. So it's done.
Is there anything in there that would alert our staff if there isn't, if it's definitely not the same signature?
No.
In other words, does the software itself compare a certain amount of
No.
points in a signature?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then the other thing that I noticed, these are standing up, they would be turned towards the people so they could sign. One of the first things I saw was you had their birthday prominently displayed.
Mhm.
And there's other people in the room that could see that. That's not very good for
Well,
identity
they are in the
theft.
poll.
But yes, it is public information. They can look it up on your computer or on the Shore system and everything else. I used to get that complaint a lot, but there was really not a lot we can do. But you are right, when that, by law, we have to have the birth date on every page. You know, we're not wireless, we're an application base. You're not sending, like when I go in and cast my vote in a precinct, it's not sending waves back and forth. Some of them work where it's sending it back to your Shore system or their command central and then back out to the polling place. We can do that. We have the capability of you sitting in the office being able to see all your poll pads if they're in a wireless environment and be able to actually look at, okay, what's the voter turnout? How many people showed up at 2 o'clock in this precinct and that precinct? However, PA still says no wireless. They don't like the wireless system. We do that in most states where we have, they can sit in the office and communicate with the poll workers, send them notes, and here's a voter that should have been in the book, or they'll send back and say, we need more provisional supplies, things like that. But in PA, it's a no wireless, so it's an application-based system. I demoed them in Somerset, and on election day, we were talking, Lori and I were talking, it would be fine to come out on election day. We actually demoed them without making them live, just to see, so that them and their staff, and they get poll worker feedback to see how they use. We did them side by side. We didn't even get everybody, because if there was a line, we just made them go through the poll books. But to be honest with you, Pennsylvania only has only three counties. Pennsylvania's always behind. If you look at 3 counties that have electronic poll books at all.
Oh.
So that means,
So
that means,
so there are electronic poll books,
60
just not your product.
right, but there's 64
Okay.
counties that still use paper. The ballpark's probably around 1,000 per poll pad when you factor everything in. We condensed everything into one. So I know some of the systems, they're on a laptop, so then you have a separate piece that plugs in for you to sign your name, like you would at your drugstore or something, something like that, where you sign your name, and then a separate piece to scan with driver's license if you want to do that. So there's a lot of wires going across the table and everything. So that's why we liked the tablet better, so you can do everything in one. And we came up with the scanner on the back of the tablet.
So there's some form of communication between pads.
Yes.
They're talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I just signed in on pad number 4, number 1's not going to let me do it because it knows that I was
Right,
I already
exactly.
did. So
Exactly.
they're just wirelessly between each other.
We have a Bluetooth, that's the Apple
Oh, okay.
Bluetooth.
Okay.
That's the Apple Bluetooth that stays within that polling place. It will not go outside they are encrypted, that if you are in this precinct, only those will come. You could sit there and try with a phone all day long and it won't do it.
It's not a wireless router, it's a Bluetooth.
No, it's the
device.
Bluetooth that Apple uses, that the United States uses for their defense team and everything else. And that's why he wanted to be in Apple so badly, Scott, the owner of the company, because of their security system.
But then how do you know that somebody didn't vote in another precinct? You said you can,
You wouldn't. It can't communicate with the other precincts. But they shouldn't be in the book in the other precincts. It would be the same as now. How would you know if they're in paper?
well, you
would've been
said they're in
signed
the
the book.
gray, and you can bypass that and let them know.
Only they would give them,
Only
only they would give them, and if they did, I'm sure they would call the
Okay.
other polling
So
place.
if they went to the wrong precinct, voted there, and so I'm gonna go back to my other one now and see if I can vote there.
First, I don't know if they would ever want to give them the rights to do that. I said you have the capability to do it. The poll worker would need to pass security passwords in order to make that person active.
We would say no.
We would
Right,
say
you would
no.
probed still tell them to vote a provisional.
Yeah, or
Right.
go to the precinct where you're
Right.
supposed to.
If they got through the security and turned that off, turned the internet back on and everything. You know what I mean? I'm sure somebody could figure out the passwords if they really had it long enough. But by the same token, and other states do have all that on, so they can go wirelessly to the counties. We just
How
don't.
many are needed per precinct? In other words, if you have 2 poll books, you need 2 of these, or can you cut down to 1?
We will always suggest 2, so you have redundancy. What we do have, I know some counties want to have 1, especially some of the counties in northern PA, where they're more rural and they might have 200 voters and, a couple hundred. What we have is we have something called an air stash, which this Bluetooths to all day long if you were to send one out to a polling place, so that it would have the backup all day. So that if you had to send another one out, you just upload the information from that backup system and into the new poll pad if something were to happen, yes. So there's always going to be a backup plan just in case if you do send one. But of course,
Sometimes we have to ask the tough questions.
Sure.
And so this one is, have you read the article that was in the CCAP newsletter, booklet that comes out, the magazine?
no, I'm still on the CCAP's election reform committee, but I don't know, maybe it came from our meeting, I don't
Last
know.
year, I think. Was it last year?
About poll books?
I think so.
About electronic poll books?
Yeah.
I believe that originally, the state came out and said, well, if you are going to have electronic poll books, you still need paper as a backup. And they've gotten away from that. A lot has changed since that, but I don't know if that's what you're referring to or not.
Well, it would be very helpful to me if you would read the article and address the issues there and answer those questions that they
Okay.
raise.
Okay.
Okay?